All right, good morning and welcome to today's webinar. The topic of the webinar today is on preparing for your data migration with SAP Information Steward. And our presenters today are Jeff Knotts, who's our Director of Solutions Consulting, and Seth Eisenberg, who's a Senior Director here at Utopia for Global Strategic Programs. I myself am Lisa Cerisi. I'm a Marketing Specialist here at Utopia, and I'll be monitoring the session. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to type those into the questions box in the panel on the side, and I'll be able to hold those to the end so these gentlemen can answer those at the end of the presentation. If you have any technical trouble, you can also send that to me in the chat. But take it away, gentlemen.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Very pleased for the time for Jeff and I to present to you today. Jeff, if you could go ahead and proceed to the first slide. So in terms of the components that we're talking about, particularly in terms of leveraging Information Steward for data migration projects, what we face essentially is a division or a chasm that often exists between the business user and IT. On the IT side, many of you will be familiar with the lack of an environment for business users to collaborate and to fully work with the IT team on data issues, and particularly to bring their knowledge to bear, specifically related to the domains that they're responsible for. Lack of consistency and repeatability on measuring and scoring data, if no such tool exists in the environment, and there aren't very many that actually are up to muster. And then no clear strategy and discipline for improving data quality. So frequently, business processes, discipline that needs to be put in place to have a data quality program and/or mature to a governance program often don't exist. And then especially keen relative to data migration projects is a minimal reuse of data assets and lots of data duplication. Really becomes quite painful. On the business side, the kinds of things that they look at are essentially not sure what the business definition is related to the data, no ability on their end to analyze data and dependencies across a heterogeneous landscape and multiple systems, and a lack of visibility to where the data is coming from, and if they're challenged on it, not really being able to justify the components there. So we'll get into this in a little more detail. Next slide, please. So the components that we look at in terms of SAP Information Steward, which has been a very powerful tool, that's three primary value propositions. The first is really to empower business users and bridge that chasm or gap between business and IT with this collaborative solution. Second is it provides a foundation for establishing governance in an enterprise and for enterprise information management. It allows for enabling effective data governance with this tool that combines data profiling on the front end, metadata approach, and data quality monitoring. So it's a critical part of governance and migration for you to be able to consider as part of your quiver of arrows. And then improving information transparency is really one of the things that is a great outcome from the use of Information Steward. That's really to provide instant visibility to data quality levels and origins, and also impact analyses and data lineage, which is where we get to that component around justifying the numbers and being able to actually have confidence that the data that's being worked with, both in terms of a migration and in terms of analytics use cases, will actually end up being being trusted data. So no other competitor in the landscape offers what SAP can offer in terms of a business user-oriented solution across those pillars. Next, please. Jeff, can you hear me? Next slide, please.
You passed the empower business users?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, the point's down. So, sorry everybody, I'm having some technical issues with my machine this morning. So the first piece here is on the business user piece and giving them the tools that they need to be able to be key partners with IT in this endeavor. So viewing how information measures up against information governance rules and standards, sharing information regarding data quality metrics and governance, viewing data quality reports and dashboards, and this becomes very important in terms of cascading this up to the folks who are overseeing as a committee the data migration, enabling business users to visualize the impact of data quality, an important key associated with deriving the business case and having empirical information to be able to justify taking on data quality without and the additional budget that's necessary. So, and then finally, increasing efficiency and reducing costs with a single solution. Next slide, please. So in terms of governing enterprise information, this is really the first step for many enterprises in terms of really working towards data governance. And many of you would have heard of the SAP tool, SAP Master Data Governance. We're going to talk about that in depth today. The Information Steward and data services end up being critical components to that, particularly on the migration side and cleansing component, and then having a governance approach in place. So this is the foundational component. So first, you define data ownership in accordance with the organization's needs, roles, accountability, and including also the maturity level that you're at. So this tool allows you to evolve from a low level of maturity to a high level of maturity, and allows you to basically go through that journey of change management without too much pain. Second, helps pinpoint errors and hotspots, which are areas where governance controls are going to need to be refined or adjusted, and particularly also in a migration, where you're going to want to focus your effort first in terms of remediating bad data. Tracing data lineage is actually important in terms of understanding how the data is used all the way from the report down to the source, and then gaining a better understanding of your complete BI environment. You also have a Metapedia that is available. It's a business glossary that really integrates and consolidates metadata from many different sources and linking the business terms. And the business is very, very critical in terms of being able to establish the depth and breadth of that Metapedia. So it's another place where the business acts in very strong partnership. And then you've got a match group review capability for the data stewards in terms of being able to review information. So with that, I mean, that gives you an overview of kind of the business intent of the tool, and particularly in terms of how to look at bridging that chasm between IT and business. It's a very important tool and has been a cornerstone of the work that we've done on data migration and data quality for a number of years now. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. I've got a couple of slides here, and then we're going to actually look at the tool, and we're going to talk about the tool in the aspect of how it's used specifically during a data migration. And in that migration, the target system can be pretty much anything you want, and the sources are going to be whatever you have. And we're going to talk about how you use Information Steward, and specifically the data insight functionality of Information Steward to look at that data to make sure that you're prepared for your data migration. Information Steward does a number of things. It discovers, defines, assesses, monitors, and improves your data quality and governance. The end goal here is down in the bottom left, is to provide the business users with a historical dashboard about the fitness of their data for use. If you notice down in the bottom left, they have a customer domain, and they have a quality dimension that takes into consideration accuracy, conformity, and completeness, if you will. And you see that they have red, yellow, and green bars, pretty much like a stoplight, to let you know whether your data is not fit for use, whether it's in danger, or whether it is fit for use. So the end goal here is to be able to create these informational dashboards to know that your data is fit for use. And to do that, you utilize different business rules that you're testing to make sure that the data does fit its scenario. We'll talk about that a little more going forward. There are 5 particular pieces of Information Steward. Information Steward is a web-based front end that gives a data analyst or business user the ability to look at data and do some introspection and find out some things about that data. Data insight is the big portion of what you do that. It's profiling and doing data quality assessment and monitoring. The tool also allows you to do metadata analysis. It allows you to do impact analysis and lineage analysis on data and to and from any dashboards or any target or source. So what that means to me is if I'm going to do some changes onto my data structure, I need to look and see what that's going to impact downstream. What other tables, what other applications, what other dashboards. Subsequently, if I'm looking at a dashboard and I see a figure on there or something that I don't quite understand where it came from, I can look at the lineage of where that data came from and find out what happened to it along the way, how it came about this algorithm or whatever that gave it this number, and I can look and quickly find out where that came from and whether that's correct or not. Seth discussed Metapedia. It's a business term glossary. There's also the cleansing package builder, which allows you to build empirical data sources for data that's non-standard business partner data. For instance, if you have a SKU list or your inventory or MRO parts, it allows you to be able to do data quality functionality on that like you would names and addresses. And finally is my Worklist. Worklist is where you approve rules that are created. It is where you look at your duplicate match review that Seth mentioned, and we're going to get into the tool and look at a little bit of these, but we're going to focus on specifically data insight, and I'll step into my Worklist for a moment to talk about that. So as a best practice, before you do a data migration, Utopia tells you that you should look at have some technical discussions with the client, find out not only we know what business rules for the target systems need to adhere to, but we interview the client and see what business rules that the data needs to adhere to do their business. We then look at this data, we put some rules in there, we take our canned rules and we create that dashboard that shows you the completeness, consistency, conformity, and duplication, and then you know what the scope of work is ahead of you before you move that data and migrate it into your target system. There's an old adage, you can't clean your house with the lights out. You need to turn the lights on, expose the dust and the dirt in your data so you know what to clean up, so that when you start up your new system, your data is fit for use and you can make intelligent decisions based upon it. One of the things we've done here at Utopia is we've taken and created something that we call an auto designer. We use SAP's data services for this, but what it essentially allows us to do are take the rules from what SAP used to call best practices for data migration, and they now call it rapid data migration. But basically, these are a set of rules. If you look on the top, they're validation rules. They take the information from your target SAP system and they allow you to run your data against those validations to find out whether your data will actually load. There are certain validations for lookup tables, there's mandatory columns, and there are format validations. All of these are just to make sure that the data will fit into the SAP system. We take those, we use our auto designer, and what we do is we recreate that code and we push it into Information Steward. And what that allows us to do then is to create a dashboard based on our rules within our data migration. So let's think about that for a second. So what that allows me to do is take the technical functions that are happening on my data on a day-to-day basis and move them up to the business user and allow them to monitor that. They're going to know how many records are fit for use or ready to load, how many records have exceptions that need to be fixed and dealt with before the load comes up. So that gives them real-time monitoring on what's going on in their data migration process. Subsequently, when you have exceptions, and you will, data that doesn't fit and it won't load, you have to deal with that. Now, there's a couple ways. The process may be a manual process. It may be a programmatic process where you take a lot of records and you have maybe a column that has 1, 2s, and 3s in it and easy A, B's, and C's. That's an easy fix with a script or a program. It may mean that somebody has to actually look at something and then do some research and actually manually put the answer in. We've used Information Steward's Worklist processing to take those exceptions from the data migration process, load them into the match review process, and allow you to actually manually manipulate the record and fix it. We then pick it back up and run it back through the process to see if it really is fixed, and if it is, then it will give you the actual message that the data can be loaded this time. It allows them, as you see, it allows users to correct or flag for additional review, and then audit and reload. So this is sort of what it looks like inside of Information Steward. If you were to look at it, we stick the error code out there, and the right-hand side tell you exactly what the issue is. This very first record here doesn't have a postal code. So that could be a programmatic fix, or they could quickly look that up and put the postal code into the record, and then we could rerun that and see if it would pass the algorithms for loading. Now I'm going to open up the actual Information Steward toolset and provide you with a demo. So I mentioned Information Steward is a thin client, web-based. So I'm going to log on to it. I'm logging in as administrator. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to open up a project called Information Steward Data Health Assessment. So our Data Health Assessment is where we've taken 2 domains of data. Here we've taken Customer Master and Material Master, and we've run some of those pre-configured checks that we have to find out the quality of the data before we try to load it. Okay, this is on your source data. So this is the first way that we use Information Steward here for data migration. So as you dig into these dashboards, it actually starts to show you under the Customer Master domain, we have these quality dimensions: completeness, conformity, consistency, and uniqueness. If I click on completeness, this is checking for null and blank. You can see this is context sensitive. As I'm clicking on here, it shows you the different tests that fall under each of these quality dimensions. Okay. So for my completeness here, you can see that I'm checking for nulls or blanks. I just want to make sure that the data, the field has data in it, because my SAP system says that there has to be data in these fields. And you can see these are the different fields down here I'm testing from within my input data. These tests are created in the workspace where you have your different library of rules, and you assign those rules to the fields you want to test. Now, a rule can be generic, as you saw within the null and blank test. I had one rule. I utilized that rule in multiple places. Therefore, I only need to manage that rule one time and reutilize it in 10 places. So let's assume that I have postal codes all over my data, and I have a format for the postal code, and I want to make sure that all of the postal codes adhere to that format. I can create one rule and apply that rule to all of the different places that I have postal code. That way I'm only managing that in one single place. So this is what you do when you want to test the data initially to find out if it's fit for use for load. So now we've done the assessment, we've looked at our data, we know what we need to do to make sure that that data is starting to go forward towards SAP. We know that the data that needs to have, the columns that need to have data in them are filled out, et cetera, et cetera. So we move into our data migration. Now, while the data migration is happening, we utilize those best practices for data migration from SAP that are now called rapid data migration. Give me a second. I'm trying to select my project here while talking. So while utilizing these best practices for data migration, we then run it through our program that actually recreates those rules from data services and recreates those rules into Information Steward. And if you look, this is broken down by different segments. So the address segment, the bank details segment, the vendor basic data, the company code, and purchasing organization. We also do some checking on how our data migration is going. So we can look at the reviews, etc., when people are doing the exceptions to make sure that they're getting through their list, and we can monitor that in here. The key here is, again, that all of these rules that reside behind these dashboards are the rules that are being run during a data migration to show whether the data will actually load. As you can see here, for the most part, our data is in pretty good shape, and if we were to try to load our new system today, the majority of our data would be able to go in there. We do have some issues back here with the vendor addresses. That doesn't necessarily mean that the data shouldn't go into the system. It just means that you probably have some quality issues on your addresses, and you may need to do something about that. However, as far as the migration rules are concerned, by the looks of this dashboard, if I was the business, I would come in here and say, we're doing very well on our progress of getting the data prepped to load into the new system, and when we get ready to go live soon, this data should load into the system. Now, the other thing that I mentioned along the way here, as you're going through these tests, there are going to be some exceptions. Exceptions are errors, basically, as we mentioned before. You saw in my in the slide that I had, but here we have some data that's going through the migration process, and I told you that we utilized the match review process to come in here and actually look at the data and see which data needs to be fixed and what the issue with the data. So who it's assigned to. So you can come in here and utilize the match review, which this isn't necessarily what it was made for, but it's what we have reutilized it for and repurposed it so that you can actually change your data and manipulate it and then rerun it through the system so that it will actually load. With that, I have kind of given the high-level overview of the tool set, if you will. Seth, if there's anything that you'd like me to highlight, I'd be happy to do so if I missed anything. If not, I think we're ready for some questions soon.
All right. If you have any questions, just type them into the chat or the questions box, please. I've already got a few that are coming in, so please continue to send those in. The first question here is, where do the original source data files reside?
They can reside wherever they need to. So the key here with this tool is to be able to go get the data anywhere. The underneath architecture of Information Steward is the SAP Data Services Platform. And what I mean by that is all of the different connectors that SAP Data Services has are exposed to Information Steward. So if your data is in your source ERP system or an Oracle system, if it's a flat file, if it's an Excel spreadsheet, all of those can be sources. The data can also be staged. If you don't want to read, this is only a simple read against your data, so it's really not a obtrusive software package. And you want to monitor source systems if you're doing ongoing monitoring. But for a data migration, we typically take a cut of the source data, wherever it is, and stick it in a holding place. Usually we create a part of the methodology is to create a standard holding staging area, and you drop your data in there, your source data in there, and do your initial looking at the data there and then manipulate it from there. But that's the process for data migration. As far as the tool is concerned, it doesn't care where the data is. Next question.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Next question is, what sort of skill set is required to write the more sophisticated rules?
So this is an easy-to-use tool that you can expose to business users that allow them a read-only way to actually look at data and not manipulate and change data inside of a system. That is a protection that the IT department likes to give, that they do not want people that aren't responsible for the manipulation of the data on a day-to-day basis to be changing it. So what that allows us to do is provide this to a business user to be able to actually do the introspection and looking at the data, finding out what the issues are, and helping to start defining what the rules are. That being said, the rules can be created inside of Information Steward, and it's really the fourth generation language. Most of the rules can be point and click, but if you want to get really sophisticated, somebody who could write a macro or a script inside of an Excel spreadsheet would be a power user in this tool. That's about all the skill set that it takes.
All right. Thanks, Jeff, for that great answer there. Next question is, what level of seniority have you seen success with people leveraging the Information Steward?
Say that one more time. Let me make sure I answer this correctly.
I'll repeat it then. What level of seniority have you seen success with people leveraging the SAP Information Steward?
All across the enterprise, but the real success comes when you have corporate sponsorship of your data governance team, and you have somebody in the upper suites looking at the actual quality of your data. So the dashboards are created for them. So if you're looking at the dashboards I see, if I'm an executive, I come in and say, okay, today I think we're going to be able to be fine to start loading our data into our new system, and I can plan. I don't need to know the minutia of all of the different tests that are in here. I look at this and I see green, and that's what I want to see. Below that, each person that is responsible for their domain of data, somebody is responsible probably for vendor addresses, somebody else is responsible for bank details, somebody else is responsible for the basic data. All of those different people are each interested in looking at the answers for their specific domain. So the tool is actually starting to help and expose anybody that has skin in the game when it comes to data quality on a day-to-day basis, if you will, from the person that manipulates the data all the way to the executives that have to make decisions based upon it.
All right, great. It doesn't seem that I have any other questions. If you have anything last minute, feel free to send that in here. But if there are no other questions, I would thank you, Jeff and Seth, for presenting today. Thank all of you for attending. You will be receiving an email with the copy of today's slideshow presentation that you can review at your leisure, as well as a link to view the webinar session if you'd like to rewatch if you have a few questions. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact us. But thanks again for joining us today.